Good afternoon. This is the Athens City Planning Commission, the meeting of January 25th, and it's 12 o'clock. So welcome all. The first order of business is to establish a quorum. We have 4 of the 5 members here today. Mayor Patterson couldn't be with us, and that is why I'm sitting in and chairing the meeting today. So we will proceed with the fact that we do have a quorum. I want to take a minute to thank Nancy Bain, who has gone off the board and is no longer with us. It's a shame that she's not here, that we can thank her and say goodbye, but I want to publicly say thank you to Nancy Bain for all she's done over the years, not only for the Planning Commission, but also with City Council and all the other aspects that she had her hands in with regard to the city of Athens. And I don't know if anybody else would like to say anything as well or not. It's fine. I kind of spoke for everybody, I guess.
Well, I will add that
Okay.
Nancy was a senior member of Athens City Council when I first met her, and she was just a real model and dedicated service to the city for so many years. So they're big shoes to fill.
They are, yes. And speaking of shoes to fill, we have with us today Chris Nisley for the first meeting that she will attend. She has agreed to be on the Planning Commission, and because the mayor wasn't able to attend today, she's already been sworn in. So she's here and ready to jump in head first into business with the Athens Planning Commission. The first item on the agenda is the election of officers. So, and we will elect two officers, a president, chair, and a vice chair or vice president. We'll do each of those individually. So we'll start with the president/chair. Are there any nominations for that? Currently, the mayor is seated as the chair of the committee or the president.
I make a nomination that John Katowski be the president for 2024.
Second it.
Are there any other people that would like to consider being the chair? Then I will, if the motion's been seconded, I'll close the nominations then. So then all those in favor of John Katowski, myself being the chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I did not vote. I'll abstain since I'm the one that's being elected. Okay, the second office then would be vice chair or vice president. Is there any nominations? Anybody like to nominate themselves, or is there anybody who would like to nominate somebody?
I'd like to make a nomination that Austin serve as vice chair for 2024.
I'll second that.
And any other people want to be considered for the position? So not hearing anybody, I'll close the nominations for vice chair. All in favor of Austin being our vice chair for 2024, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? So it passes unanimously. Both offices are filled now, and they were both unanimously approved.
Thank you.
The next item of business is the disposition of minutes. So we haven't met since the first Thursday in November. Is that true? It's been that long. Okay. It has been a while then. Okay. So I think everybody has received them by email and also may have them as a printed copy. So does anybody have any questions or concerns about anything in the minutes? If not, I would accept a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? So hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the minutes of November 2nd have been accepted. We have no cases today to talk about. And then the next item on the agenda is communications. On the agenda, we have the review of the 2024 Planning Commission goals. Andy, do you have anything to say about that?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few items that the mayor and I discussed as we were, leaving 2023 that we thought would be appropriate to put forward in this first meeting for 2024 to talk about our goals as we lay out our plan going forward. Certainly at the pleasure of the chair and vice chair. The first one is to pick up the council resolution asking us to study and recommend a zoning limit on the number of tobacco retailers per each zone in each area of the city. And I believe, as does the mayor, that this will grow in urgency as the rules and the laws surrounding the sale of recreational marijuana become more solid at the state level. And so I think this is something that will be important that the Planning Commission does. There was an ordinance, a resolution, I believe, passed by City Council following our typical process when the council wants the Planning Commission to weigh in on zoning changes at the end of 2023. I don't have that resolution number off the top of my head, but we'll try to get it. But that's one, and I think the intent there is basically to look at the various zones in the city, various B zones in the city, as well as M zones, and determine what's appropriate as far as this work. I don't know if David, if you wanted to add anything else on that while we're talking about it right now.
Just to let you know that we did some research, or I did some research, and if we think that there are 33 businesses in the city within the city corp limits that have tobacco licenses at this time, and we have names and addresses, so it would affect those 33 businesses.
And the point is that while the zoning wouldn't necessarily preclude their operation, we would like to say what the appropriate number are in a city, in our city specifically. And so that would be the first item. The second item is, following up on the report that we got in the November 2nd meeting and the minutes that we just approved, which is on the Stimson Avenue redevelopment plan, specifically design and recommend a zoning overlay for Stimson Avenue. And that's an outgrowth of that plan that American Structure Point put to us. This overlay would include mapping and then specific code language that modifies the zoning to support the goals from the study. So that would be another goal for the Planning Commission to go forward. And then once that zoning overlay, is in a state where we like it and we vote on it, we would vote for approval and send that to City Council for them to consider adoption into the code. There are a couple other zoning overlays in the city right now. Number one, the wellhead protection area is a zoning overlay, and what that does is it levies additional restrictions on the underlying zoning of parcels that sit inside that source water protection area. The other is the Historic Preservation District in the Uptown area that talks about historic preservation. So while zoning overlays don't necessarily have to add restrictions to the underlying zoning, there can be instances where the zoning overlay removes restrictions from the underlying zoning or specifies other things that are our goals. But the intent here would be to promote, to put zoning in place that is the best tool for us to promote redevelopment along Stimson Avenue. The third.
Could I ask?
Yep, go ahead.
So does the Stimson zoning overlay place additional restrictions or not?
I think it could do both.
Okay.
It could be, overlays don't necessarily have to add
Right.
restrictions. They could actually remove restrictions. And so an example would be, in a situation where, say, a particular zone has a buffer restriction that's in place now, or a lot coverage restriction that's in place now, the zoning overlay could remove those if we thought appropriate in a given area. So, that's an example. Or building height would be another one. If building height is a certain level in a particular zone, if you wanted to, you could either do an overlay and then that would modify.
So what you're saying, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What you're saying is that we will, in part, have some say as to whether there are additional restrictions based on what we pass, or whether there are some areas where that we actually reduce restrictions or.
Correct.
So give an example that I always think is interesting on Stimson. Mr. Good built a building there next to the dry cleaning laundry building. And it's like a really narrow building. And so it faces sideways instead of front. And that has to do with the fact that it was built based on the current zoning regulations there now. Is that true?
Yes.
And so what we might see is something different, where that property wouldn't have needed to been turned to do that. It's a part of this whole thing.
Perfect example, yeah.
Okay.
So that's a second goal for 2024. A third goal for 2024 is to work with the new community authority on zoning changes needed to modify the Ridges zoning, so that development, as that development comes into focus and as different sub-developments are happening under the new community authority, it will have to work with the zoning. The current zoning is all EI, which is a unique zoning to that particular portion of the city that was established when that area was annexed. And so this body will need to, basically, receive the request for rezoning and, approve, deny, modify that, and send it on to council for approval. And so that will be some work. Of note, Member Nisley and myself are both members of the new community authority board. So we won't be able to obviously vote if they're making the request on those, but we will be able to be a conduit for information back and forth as we discuss and plan that effort. Another goal that the mayor and I discussed for 2024 is to integrate the new city planner. There is a new member of the administration that we're extremely excited to get on board. Initially, we were thinking late February was when she was going to start, but now it's looking like 12 February is going to be the beginning of her work here in Athens, and her name is Megan Jennings. I won't give too much into her background, but she did spend a period of time in Athens, both in high school and then her undergrad was in Ohio University. However, since then, she's been away working in a couple different communities, most notably Muncie, Indiana, as well as Lexington, Kentucky, and some of the work that she did as in planning in both of those communities, I think is going to be a great experience to bring to Athens. And then the last goal that I saw is just to to continue to do all the work that we normally do, which is review developments that come before the commission.
Do any of the other planning commissioners want to say anything about either the goals that are being proposed or any other goals that they might see of value that we look at in 2024?
Got a couple questions and a couple
Okay.
of comments.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that the one that starts with a resolution requesting us to study the zoning limits on tobacco is something that we want to approach fairly soon. And my question would be, you have identified the 33 businesses, Co-Director Riggs, so that's helpful. What might be helpful too, and you may already have done it, is the zones in which they are located. So if we could kind of see them superimposed on a zoning
I thought that would
map
look
help.
best as a zoning map, so as a picture. And we've got a Kathleen who's been working with us on the GIS. She's out on vacation right now, so I couldn't bring that to you. But as soon as she gets back, we'll do a GIS map that'll better show those locations and what zones those are in.
Sure.
I think that'll be very helpful.
Sure, okay. And the structure point, I was able to watch the presentation that council made in November. And so I'm assuming that, and I was impressed with the presentation, that we'll be wanting to continue to work with them. And then will they be, I guess a quick question on the timeline and how they'll be coming back to us or how soon, do you think?
Well, they've presented a proposal to me to, to basically take it to the next level on code language and such. And so, when we do have money in the 2024 budget to be able to pay for those services, so basically, they would be the consultancy working for Planning Commission, developing, specific language, and obviously working with David and the new planner when they come on board, to go over the zoning overlay. I haven't pulled the trigger on that contract yet because I thought it'd be appropriate for both David and the new planner to review it and see to what level we want to commit funds versus what we can do in-house.
Okay. And I guess in terms of overall, in terms of goals, and I'm still doing homework because I'm doing a review of the comprehensive plan again and looking at the document and trying to re-familiarize myself because it's been a while since I've read it. But one of the things that I noted was, our number one, that part of the goals for this group, I think, as stated in the comprehensive plan, is also to work with other organizations. And I know we do from time to time, like Environmental and Sustainability Group, the Historic Preservation Group. But there's also a specific mention of opportunities in working closely with the university. And so I know we've got the new community authority, we're addressing some kinds of housing with that as the Ridges redevelops. But if we want to look at, I'm just posing the question is, do we want to consider looking at other opportunities where the university might offer some good partnerships about new ventures. And it might be, along the 1804 way, as they're talking about with the structure point, that might be one of them, but there might be other opportunities. So that's just to pose the question on my part about that.
So just as a technical question, are we, we're not approving these goals today necessarily?
I don't think so.
Okay, so so that's a good one to consider and think about how we might improve, or maybe it's improve is a wrong word, but maybe take advantage of the city university relationship in more ways than we have in the past.
Want to consider that?
Yeah, I think so. I think we should do that and talk about that as we.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just to give a kind of an update, the vice president for planning AVP for planning at the University, Shauna Wolf, moved on to another position with another university, and so that there's a gap, a void at this point. And I think as the administration shakes out, who's going to kind of pick up the duties. There's different folks that we've got long-term relationships with that are picking up the duties in the interim. I don't know that they're going to replace her in her specific form. It may be that there's different positions that will pick up different duties and such, but with their organization. But certainly, I'll stay tuned in to the university administration as much as possible and pull them into planning commission activities as we can. We have interacted with them, and certainly David has, recently related to new builds and whether or not those new builds are compliant with zoning. And in instances, just as a reminder for the body, in instances where they're not compliant with zoning, they're not compelled to comply. However, there is a requirement that they come before this body and explain why a particular new build can't comply with zoning. And that's more from a public awareness for anything else. And I think the most recent one where we had that was the Heritage College of Medicine building. Mm-hmm. There were some variations on zoning code and setbacks perhaps with that. I'm not exactly sure which ones, but they came forward and spoke to this body. I expect at some point within the next couple months, some of the work with the additional Heritage College building that's going to go in down there may have a situation where it doesn't entirely comply with zoning, and so they'll need to come and talk to us about that.
I mean, and certainly if we're looking at flood mitigation for Stimson, right, yeah, I know they don't have to comply, but we want them to be aware of it.
Yep.
And I don't think those kind of things are going to become less prevalent. I think we have a higher risk of potential floods at the, 100-year level or 500-year level that we're going to be facing.
Is there anything, so maybe, Andy, I don't know if you can give us any kind of an update on the discussion that has taken place thus far with regard to a council of government? And is there a council of governments? And is there anything that might make sense for the planning commission to take on for 2024?
And you're specifically talking about solid waste?
Well, I think so, but I don't know. I'm assuming if there is a council of governments is developed, it may ultimately go beyond just solid waste, right? I mean, things to strengthen the whole southeastern Ohio area. I don't know. But at any rate, yeah, I think right now I'm just talking about the council of governments. Or I mean, excuse me, the solid waste, sure. Yes.
Well, insofar as, new development in that, I don't really have anything to report. The city is already a member of 2 different councils of government that are right off the top of my head, most notably Buckeye Hills Regional Development District, which we've been a member of for as long as I've worked here, and more recently, WRCA, the Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachian. So those are 2 functioning councils of government that the city currently is a member of. To have another one established for solid waste is certainly something that that we'll look into. I really think that the work to do that is probably not a planning commission activity. It's probably an administrative activity to determine, the best way to deliver services for the best price to the citizenry.
So the 2024 goals will be a part of the next agenda. And so now it looks like we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's 7 goals with the last one that we added to that list. So we'll talk about those, and people can go at the when the council breaks up today, or the commission breaks up today, we can think about those, talk about those questions that might come up. We can discuss them, and maybe massage them, and finalize them at our next meeting.
Mr. Chair, would you want to vote on those, or actually make a formalized process, or not? I don't know that there's any requirement to do so, but it may be a good idea.
Yeah, well, right now I would say yes.
I think it would be a good idea.
And I don't know, is there any other thoughts about goals? Okay, so we'll bring that as an item for our next meeting. The next are reports, and so on the agenda we have David Riggs to report Code Enforcement Office.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we've already talked about the tobacco changes in code with tobacco legislation. We're working on that. In addition to that, I had a request late this week for a rezoning, which is something that this body looks at, and I just wanted to let you guys look at it and make some comments on that. So if I could pass these out. Mr. DeLuca asked us in a letter for a rezoning of some areas on Elliott. This is, if you'll note, this is just south of Stimson. It's also right adjacent to one of our M zones. Athens Mold and Machine is located just to the east of these 4 lots that I have highlighted in black. The top lot, which is not highlighted, is actually a business zone. It's a B3 zone. The other 3 lots that are here is a zoning request, and those are currently R3 zoned. And the developer would like to change that to a business zone. He would prefer a B3. We're looking at more of a B1 zone. And the reason we think a B1 zone would be preferred is because there are 2 existing residential structures on these 3 lots. With a B1 zone, we wouldn't create a non-conforming use with a B1. You would with a B3 zone. And there's really not much difference between what can go into a B1 and a B3 zone. The primary difference is you can't have in this case, you couldn't have a drive-through or drive-up area. The other restrictions are similar between a B1 and a B3. But looking at this, I want to make sure we're not just looking at one person's request. We'd like to see a buffer here between the M zone and the residential zone. When you have M zones and residential abutting each other, that's probably not the best type of zoning. We'd like to see a buffer there. So I would look at maybe considering changing some of these lots to the south to a different zone than residential, and maybe a B zone. The next the next 4 lots to the south are all owned by Athens Mold and Machine. The lot below that is a residence, and it's owned by somebody different. And then the lots all the way down to Mill Street after that are all owned by one property owner. So it wouldn't be too difficult. We'd basically be dealing with 3 additional property owners if you did want to look at rezoning those areas. And I'll allow the Planning Commission to direct me on where they would like to go with that.
What are these currently?
They're all currently R3 except for the very top lot between Elliott and I think it's a right of way or an alley. Just to the north. That one lot, and this is above that little black square that I have in there. That is currently a B3 zone, but all the lots below that are R3.
And you're recommending B1, you said?
Yes, the applicant is asking for for a B3, but we think a B1 may be more appropriate there.
So that maybe has a little bit of, at least it would have a few more restrictions because it wouldn't allow the drive-through.
It does.
So my ignorance here to ask on the process, they've asked for a zoning request, and I will share with you that when I looked through the structure point and watched the presentation, I guess my one, they made they were looking at Stimson, and they were looking at the area north of Stimson, they were looking at the area south of Stimson. So this is the area south of Stimson,
Yeah,
the redevelopment.
it's very close to Stimson, yeah.
And that was my one question on this, is like, what are the assumptions with what's going to happen to Mill Street and this whole area in here? And can the zoning commission, or could you as code director say, we want to do this in concert with the structure point work to redevelop this area? And I don't know, it's just a thought,
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. I think the property owner is intending to do something sooner than that. So he'd like to see some changes made by early summer, and we wouldn't be able to get that done that quick, I don't believe.
Do we have information on them, what they're intending to plan if approved?
Yeah, the idea is that he has a vending service that he has, and he wanted to put in some kind of almost a warehouse type of vending with some sales as well there. So it would again fit nicely into a B1 zone or a B3. So.
And what's the zoning across the street?
Across the street to the west is also residential. It's an R3 zone.
And that's some of the last homes, and a few of them are individually owned, although one may be an estate at this
This
point.
is down close to Mill Street, so there are a lot of rental units down in this area.
Okay.
One a comment, Mr. Chair, and a question. Number one, the comment would be, I think what we could do to speak with Commissioner Nice's point is look at this zoning request in concert with the recommendations that came from the report to make sure that we wouldn't do anything that would be completely in conflict with that report, and move this maybe in advance in order to support the business owner. But obviously bearing that report in mind, the question that I have is other than the drive-through, can you speak specifically to the differences in B1 versus B3 And I want to say that isn't first floor residential one of the?
Yes,
one of
it
the
is.
That's a fairly significant difference
Yes.
between those two. Can you describe that to the commissioners just for their?
Yeah, so beginning in a B2D, there's no residential allowed on the first floor. And so we have stacked zoning. What that means is that anything past a B1 zone is no residential is allowed on the first floor. So you go to B2, B3, and M zones, those would not be allowed on any of those levels. On a B1 zone, they do allow residential on the first floor, and we do have two different structures here that are currently rental units on Elliott that would not be in conflict with the zoning as a B1, but would become a legal nonconforming use as a B3.
Gotcha. So, but whereas a B1, it would still be conforming.
It would still be conforming,
we,
yes.
We do allow first floor residential in B1s,
Yes.
and we don't have a lot of B1 in the city. That neighborhood business zone. I think that probably the most prominent one that everybody kind of thinks of is the area along East State Street, kind of in the Village Bakery area. I think that's a B1 zone, if I'm not mistaken. But otherwise, there's not a lot of B1 in the city. The intent is neighborhood business, is kind of what it's called. Now, I do think that that prohibition on first floor residential is an important prohibition in our B2Ds, B3 zones, because there is some market pressure to put housing in different parts of the city, and rental housing specifically. And I think you look at some places that don't have that restriction in their B2D zones or their B3 zones, and you end up having basically residences in places that you really want commercial property. In this case, that may not be as important. And to the co-director's point about doing a rezoning that creates a legal non-conforming use because it was grandfathered basically versus creating or changing it to a zone where everything that is currently happening in the zone would be legal. It's kind of one of the nuances between that. It's not that I don't know that the property owner minds to create that legal non-conforming use, but that might be a consideration for us.
So say that again. I'm just wrapping my head around the legal nonconforming use. In what case this would be?
Yeah. So at the north, the area where the property owner has requested this
Yep.
in the north.
Yep.
There are two houses. Is that correct, David?
Correct,
There are
yes.
Two houses.
Okay.
And those houses, while his goal is to change it now, to be this vending operation and warehouse type unit. If we made it a B3, those houses, until such time that he changed what they were doing, they would be non-conforming.
Okay.
That's okay because we changed the zoning after they were already doing it. But like right now, an example of a place where we run into this from time to time is along Richland Avenue, where there'll be a couple houses that are in an area that does not allow first floor residential. And the way that we manage that, correct me if I'm wrong here, David, is if they go for a year without being utilized as residential, then no longer are they permitted to have residential on that first floor.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. I have another question about the map, and you've indicated, so this one area up top with a solid, that's a zoning request made by the person, the citizen. And you've put recommended rezoning for the next block of four parcels. Is that your recommendation?
Yes, it is. That's mine.
And
Yes.
your rationale for that is just to begin to make it consistent, or?
Yeah, my rationale would be that we really need to have a buffer between the M zone and
Oh, you mentioned
industrial
that. Got
zone
it.
and
Okay.
a residential zone.
And so
It's
that
just
does the
not-
buffer.
It would be much better to have some kind of a buffer in
Okay.
between in there, and a B zone would be very effective as a buffer between the residential and the industrial.
David, why would anyone ask for a B3 instead of a B1 if B1 provides more flexibility? What's the benefit to a B3?
There's a little more, there's a bit more that you can do. Like I said, one of the things would be potential for a drive-through. Bottling works are allowed. There's some other stuff that's allowed in a B3 that's not allowed in a B1. contractors' yards, bottling works,
Which one can build higher?
they're the same.
They're the
Same
same.
height is the same. Contractors' yards, animal hospitals, regular hospitals, and then we talked about like the drive-ins and drive-throughs. Although there is some restrictions within a certain distance from some R zones, so that doesn't apply here because you are going to be right adjacent to some R, still adjacent to some R zones, even if you do change it to a B1 or a B3.
But for a warehouse distribution type, not,
Yes, there's, no restrictions whether it's a B1 or a B3.
the drive-through is specific for business, like, right? They could have a drive-through for their trucks. They could drive through their warehouse, but just can't be open for business. For
Yeah,
drive-through
the way
sales.
we define a drive-through is it's like for purchasing
Okay,
something for some consumption, yeah.
thank you.
So, yeah, so you could have a commercial driveway that's not a drive-through by our definition.
Thanks.
So they could drive the truck, and this is kind of nice too, because they have an alley to the east and Elliott to the west, so they could actually put a structure in where they could drive in on one street and drive out the other street. That's not a drive-through.
And you would want feedback on this at the next,
So this is
Commission
just
meeting
for your
or-
information. What we're
Okay.
going to do, Patty, help me out, make sure that I'm right. We're going to do a communication next if the developer wants to move forward, and he'll come to that meeting and be able to answer questions that you have, and then we'll do a communication afterwards. Or a case afterwards,
Case.
sorry, a case afterwards where you'll make a recommendation, and then that recommendation will go to city council for review and
oh,
approval.
okay.
or
And
not.
at public hearings at any point during these?
There will be a public hearing at
City
for
council.
city council. We do have public input in our communication in cases.
Okay.
So, so basically, he's asking for a B3. You're recommending B1, and also to make the 4 parcels south of what the owner is hoping to do, also a B3.
That's correct. A
B-
B1,
B1.
yeah.
Or
that's
B1,
correct, yeah.
B1, I'm sorry, yeah. And so basically, though, if it were a B1, that's really going against what the intent of the code is, right? Because didn't you say that B1 is designed to be, is for neighborhood businesses similar to East
Yeah,
State? So,
yeah.
so it's actually not consistent with what a B1 is.
So if he does a warehouse with some sales to local sales, yeah, I think it would be appropriate as a B1 local business, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? And is that all you have for Dan?
Yeah, that's all I've got.
Thank you. I think that's essentially what we have for the meeting today. I guess a question I have is that next Thursday would be the next scheduled meeting. Do we want to do that? Would you be prepared to come forward, or what do we want to do about the next, the first Thursday of February?
I could be ready for that if you wanted to do a meeting.
I will not.
You will not be here.
I will not be here as well. I'm out for the next 2 weeks on duty. Well, actually, I will be here on the 8th, but not next week.
Do we have any cases? I mean, would this be ready?
So this could be a communication for the rezoning. I don't think we'll be ready for any other of the stuff that's in the pipeline for that meeting. This would be the only thing that I have.
And they want this by early summer?
Like to, that was the request.
So if we held off for the communication till the third week in February, that would work as well. And then there may be some other cases as well.
Correct. There could be
some other
more.
business.
There could be more, yeah, business,
And,
yeah.
and then we could try to finalize the goals at that meeting. You won't
gonna
be
be
here.
away.
Yeah, well, no,
That
I mean,
one-
and I can work my schedule specifically, outside of this, with you, Mr. Chair, and certainly with the Secretary on that. These next 2 weeks, I'm in a course, but my longer term problem is the third Thursday, for me, in my current National Guard position, is always a state level meeting. And that third Thursday tends to fall on our planning commission meetings when we have them. So that's my long-term problem going forward. It's not necessary that I be in all of these, but kind of looking over the next few months as things are coming up.
You'd be consistently away.
At least
unless
one of
we-
the 2 a month, unless we
shift.
we do some shifting. And I hate to be the problem, that causes that. I don't want to delay business of the commission, but that's part of my other duty.
Is there a reason we can't shift that? The second and fourth, or whatever?
I mean, I certainly could work
Can
with.
we do that, you think? No.
Oh, okay. Doesn't work for this.
I think municipal court has this reserved on the second report. I'm not sure. I have to check.
Could we meet in the front conference room instead?
Well, it needs to be,
Aired.
Aired, live streaming. And the only other option right now is maybe functioning at the community center. Could we shift, are they here all day in court on the?
I don't know the details.
Oh,
but
okay.
we could ask
Yeah.
Debbie. They would,
Okay,
she might know the schedule and what the requirement is.
Cool.
this,
Let's
right,
follow up
because
on
this is an important person.
Right, right. But
to
for that
have
first,
here.
for the
Yeah.
first one, the next coming third Thursday, it would be a communication, and we wouldn't be voting on it until the first Thursday in March, which you would be here.
Correct.
And so we can work with the mayor and really talk through and figure out whether we can adjust the schedule, but we can stick with it right now, plan on doing the third Thursday instead, and cancel the meeting for the first Thursday in February. And then you can work with the mayor on the goals and anything you have so that he can bring it to the table
Certainly.
at that meeting.
Okay. Absolutely.
Let's do that. But then, I don't know, how do we, Patty, can you check and see if this would be available if we wanted to shift, and also maybe whether the community center would be an option or some other location?
I don't think so, because we need to have it recorded by the government channel.
I think
It's hard
they-
for them to move their equipment around.
I think they've got the setup functioning at the community center was the latest word I heard, but that could be wrong.
I'll talk to
Ryan
Scott.
would be able to help
Okay.
us.
With
Okay.
the mayor and the service safety director's busy schedule, this is.
This is really
Yes,
convenient,
convenient.
yes, because all I have to do is come upstairs.
I mean, maybe we could, instead of having the third Thursday, just do the lines days before the third Thursday.
That's
Yeah, let's
fine.
just look at days or weeks, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
open to it, so.
I'm flexible.
Cool.
Okay. Okay, so with the mayor, we, Patty and both, look at what are our options and talk about them on that Thursday.
Okay.
Anything else for the good of the order?
No.
So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?